Casas with us. He is the owner of the HR office. Simon is an expert with HR issues. I will tell you, he is not an attorney. We had our attorney speak last week on a webinar that we have shared out on our YouTube channel. So if you didn't get a chance to sit in on that one, please go out to our website and you can see the YouTube channel and you can click on that webinar, because they did share a lot of really good information and things that we should know. Simon's going to focus on a lot of the HR issues that we as employers and employees have with people getting ready to go back into the office. Simon, would you give us just a little bit of background?
Well, I got into business just the other day, about 43 years ago. And the last 25 or 26 has been primarily in HR consulting work. And so that's what I've been doing the last 26 years.
Yes. I know we've had you as a guest speaker before at one of our lunches, and you were very, very informative with information that you shared with us. And we'd like to ask you some specific questions around the stay-at-home time and getting ready to go back into the office. So let's just get started. You know, one of the questions that I'm hearing quite a bit is some employees don't really feel safe going back into the office. What can you tell us on an employer and an employee side on that issue?
Well, obviously, that's a very legitimate concern. People who don't feel safe, I guess it's up to the employer to communicate the things that the employer has done or is doing to create a safe environment, to help them to understand and feel comfortable that the employer is doing all they can to make it a comfortable environment.
So with that being said, are you talking about like cleaning procedures and wearing masks and?
Well, I mean, you have, for example, take a small office such as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get as much traffic as other businesses may have. But if I was afraid to come in to your office, the question would really become, why am I scared? What am I afraid of? You know, I think fear is really a symptom of the pandemic as opposed to a legitimate reason. So that takes me almost to one of the other questions we talked about earlier, which is, what do you do if an employee is afraid to come back because they don't feel safe? I think it is wise, at least for the next 30 days, for an employer to be patient, be understanding, and to remember to treat people the way they would like to be treated if it was them. Because we're still early in this phase one. And like I said, phase one, what has really changed with phase one? Well, they've made a statement that we're going to start opening up, which is a good psychological medicine for all of us too. We're happy that we're headed in the right direction. But the rules about washing your hands, face mask, distancing, that all stays the same. So that didn't change with phase one. It doesn't change with phase two. It'll start to lighten up with phase three. So we mentioned earlier too about everybody talks about the new normal. And what I think personally, they're getting too hung up on the new normal. So what I would like to make people think about is, what was the old normal you had before this so-called new normal? So if you think back to March, February, January, what was normal? What kind of issues were you experiencing? What kind of personnel issues were we experiencing? And under the new normal, the only thing I can say positive about the new normal is I think people are going to be thrilled to death to go back to work. And they're going to be really happy for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then I believe what's going to happen is what your old normal used to be is going to start sneaking back in. And whatever problems you had in the old normal are still going to be there. They're not going away. So don't forget about the old normal and think in terms about how can you, instead of a new normal, how can you make it better? Coming back, how can we make it better than it was? You know, not only from a safety standpoint, but also from a standpoint of making sure that your workforce is doing all the things that you as an employer are needing them to do.
So Simon, right down to the nitty gritty, I'm an employer, I have employees, the employee doesn't want to come back, but I really need them to be able to do my business. What do I do?
Why do they not want to come back?
Well, let's just stay on this one, that they don't feel safe.
If they don't feel safe, well, fear by itself does not qualify as a legitimate excuse under the what is the Families First Corona Act. Okay, it doesn't.
Huh.
So therefore, again, a little common sense, a little understanding, and talking to your employee, what is it they're afraid of?
Yep.
What is it? And then you if you were just talking to a friend, hey, I'm scared about this, you'd say, what are you scared of? And you'd be trying to talk them through why they shouldn't be afraid of it. And I think you have to take the same approach with somebody who's scared. Now, this is the ugly part. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to you need an employee to do the job, and they need to be there. And so if they refuse to come back to work, even though you've done everything you possibly can, I think you've done all you can, and you probably may have a legitimate reason for a termination and hiring somebody else. Somebody who, because fear, now that's where you got to be careful, because what is the fear? If they're afraid that their family's going to get sick, that doesn't count. If they're afraid that they might get sick, that doesn't count. If they're afraid their children might get sick, that doesn't count. But where you have to be careful is why, okay? Because if somebody says, hey, I still have 2 kids at home, and for example, their schools aren't open and they need to stay home, that does fall under the new plan. So if they have to stay home to take care of their children, if they've been getting any kind of leave pay from you, then the odds are they haven't even started to exhaust any of the rights under the FFCCR plan. So they're going to be eligible.
Okay.
Now, if somebody says, I'm sick, I can't come back to work because I'm sick, they need to stay home, right? And they're covered under that law. But fear, the fear of going back is not covered. And even if an employee says, well, I want to stay home for stay home for 14 days and all this stuff, the key to this applying is that they have to be under medical care. So I can't just say, hey, I think I'm getting sick, I'll stay home under this new coronavirus stuff and stay home and utilize my sick leave. But it needs to be under a doctor's care. If it's not, then you're not eligible for it.
Yep. So a question came in and it says, what happens when businesses are not doing much of anything they say they do, but they're not?
What do you mean they say, but they're not? Can we have a little more clarification?
Yep. Well, I think I interpret it like they say they're doing things, but they really aren't getting those things done. Let's just use cleaning,
to make people feel safe?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing under the guidelines, they would get in trouble if somebody reports them. I think that most people that say they are doing things probably are.
Yeah.
But then again, smaller employers, maybe not. And if you're not doing what you told me you're going to do to make it a safe environment for me to come to work, now if I say I don't want to come to work because I don't feel safe, and if not feeling safe and being afraid isn't covered, and somewhere down the road you decide to let me go, well, if I'm a disgruntled employee, I may bring it up that you didn't follow the rules under the CDC or OSHA or anything like that.
Yep. Back to the original question that we were talking about being unsafe, because I do think this is weighing heavily on people's mind. A question is, so what if you have a health condition? They've named several of them. If you are undergoing chemotherapy or you have asthma, so you are at high risk.
Mhm.
And it does add to your fear. Does that change the conversation that we've been having about whether you go back or not?
That one's legitimate because people 60, 65 or over who have higher risk of getting ill, you do have to let them stay home. They would qualify under that. My understanding is they would.
Interesting.
Well, take me. I am one of those people that has to be in, what do they call it? Additional being careful, basically. And the only reason I'm healthy, I'm totally healthy, have nothing wrong with me, but because I'm over 70, I'm in that class of people. So in my case, where I'm a sole proprietor, I've already concluded that I will not attempt to go into my office and work till July 1st. The reasons for that is I'm just thinking, well, the reality is phase 3 would be over around or start June 1st. So maybe in June, we'll really kind of know whether it's safe or not. And I'll wait till July. Plus,
Yeah.
my wife is really good at reminding me about that, so I have to let her pay attention.
Here we go. We have our fingers crossed. That's all happening. One of the other things that I've fielded several times is there are people that are making more money on unemployment right now than they are with their jobs and working. So they say, nope, I'm not coming back. Can you help us with that scenario?
Well, I don't believe it's their choice, because if you have worked for somebody, I believe the unemployment forms that people fill out talk about, are you able to work and were you available to work? So if work is being offered to you and you're able to work and you're available to work and choose not to work, it sounds to me like that ends unemployment. So, I guess they have to find out. People could lie, but the reality is if you have work available, if you can do it, and you just choose not to do it, that's not unemployment.
So at that point, is the employer able to release them from employment so that they can rehire the position?
Well, again, for at least the next 30 days, I would be doing everything I can to show that I was doing everything I could do for the benefit of the employee.
Yes.
Because if I go 30 days of trying to show I've done everything I can to help you come back and you're just refusing to come back, then you have no choice.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You need somebody to do whatever you need them to do. And if you've got the job, you have the employee, you offer it, they're able to, and there's no reason for them not to. Other than that, I would like to believe, now I don't have that from anybody at the unemployment office, but I'd like to believe that that would terminate their unemployment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something else that we're seeing and hearing a lot about on the news is there are companies that are already taking temperatures of employees when they're showing up for work. What's your opinion on that? Should we be doing that?
On the temperatures?
Yes.
Well, it's a catch-22 because, first of all, not everybody who has the coronavirus is going to have a fever. Not everybody who has a fever is going to have coronavirus. My question would be is, who's going to do it? So in a little office like yours, you don't have a doctor on staff, you don't have a nurse on staff. So you would have to appoint somebody to be the person who does them. And let's say that you decide, well, Deb's going to do it. Stoney's going to do it, okay? So if Stoney's going to do it, you have to make sure that Stoney really knows how to do all the stuff correctly. Then you have to consider how you're going to protect Stoney so that he doesn't get it. Is he going to have certain garments on and masks and all this stuff as well? I mean, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. And then I can't help thinking, what's the risk involved with that? I suppose you could also have the employees take their own temperature at home and just tell them if it's a certain temperature, stay home. So there are options. I just think that one's probably one that could create some liability issues, only because it's medical, and only because, again, you have to also remember that if you're going to do it, that's confidential information, that temperature. That's private medical information. So how are you going to protect that if you're just in a little small 2-room office? 2 people
Yep.
can come in and go. I mean, if you were a company of, I'm guessing, 300 people, probably have a medical person on staff, and they can do those kinds of things. But you're not trained to do that. I'm not trained to do that. I wouldn't want to do it. Do you?
No.
Who wants to volunteer?
Yeah. Not only just the liability, but time. So if you're talking about a 300-person business, just the amount of time that it's going to take to process all of the people coming in. Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to it.
Now, keep in mind that if they come in and they have to wait a half an hour to take their temperature, that's paid time.
Right.
So you're paying them to stand there and wait in the line until they can get the temperature.
Right.
All kinds of factors come into that.
So are there other? Go ahead.
I said they're all good, but the most important thing is you just have to be patient. Understanding this is better than it was 2 weeks ago, but we don't know how much better. So just give people some grace, like you would like to have if it was you,
Yeah, it's very
All
true.
the other issues that will come from it will materialize no matter what we do. I have a client that took action early on. They asked me, and I told them, I think you need to be patient. This is at the beginning. They made a decision to do some things that I suggested they shouldn't do. What will result from that? Maybe we'll find out in September, October, November, unless they dodge a bullet, If you can be patient, I think that is the wiser scenario to choose, because it buys you more time. It gives you opportunities to communicate with your workforce. It gives you time to think all this stuff through, so that if you have to make one of those hard decisions, if nothing else, you can show you did everything you could for the benefit of the employee. And then it just didn't work by their choice.
And bottom line, I know that's what our businesses really do. They take care of their employees. So I agree with you, Simon. Are there other things that you can think of that maybe we haven't thought of that we can talk about?
Well, for me, the thing, I have not been as busy since all of this stay-at-home stuff, partially because of my age. But the other side of the coin is I'm really confident that come July or August, the normal you used to have before we talk about the new normal is going to shift, and it's going to become your normal stuff again. And then that's when all the problems will come up, and then that's when all the real issues will occur about what should I do or not do. And some of them will be easy and some of them will not be, because it's never any fun to exercise any authority that you may be able to. You still have to hold people accountable. They still have a job. The job didn't go away. You didn't change their job description. You're going to change. Now, what about the people who have been working from home and they still want to work from home? I think some companies will discover that, hey, this works pretty good. So that'll be their new way of doing things. Not every job can be done that way. You'll have some people, because of their fear or their concern for getting sick, that's where, it may be smart just to say, I understand, and keep working from home for 2 more weeks. That's what I mean by being cautious and gracious. Allow them to do that and allow time for all of this stuff to really go away.
You know, Simon, quite frankly, that's what the state has encouraged as well. If you can work from home, continue working from home. That's exactly what the chamber's doing. We,
Yeah.
at least for another 2 weeks, because we're getting everything done that we would be doing at the office. So there's no reason not to be doing and continuing. So I highly encourage with what you're saying. If you've been doing it at work, continue doing it. Like you said, it shows goodwill that you're trying to work with that employee. You know, one of the things that I'm going to say is big companies are afforded the opportunity of having HR departments. Some of the smaller businesses that we work with do not have that. So this is where you're going to become increasingly valuable to our membership. I really thank you for being here today to answer some of the questions and give us some direction. Do we have any more questions for Simon today, or any last thoughts that you want to share with us, Simon? Oh, we do have one more. Let's see what this is. A forklift driver comes back and demands more hours than before, or he will quit. Is he being silly?
My immediate response was, okay.
No, that's a true statement. He works 30 hours a week, and now he wants to be bumped up to 40 hours a week, and he wants me to pay half his insurance, and he's demanding or he's going to quit. So what's that got to do with 4 weeks ago when we had to furlough him? So,
Well, remember, one of the laws that did not change is employment at will. He can quit anytime he wants to, without reason, without notice, without cause. And you can fire them anytime you want to, without reason, without notice, without cause. Though that law has not changed because of the pandemic.
well, I think we're going to get a lot of people trying to do that kind of stuff because they're not as educated as you are about employment. So thank you.
Well, yeah, this is a time where, again, if you think of the old normal includes many people who will learn or have already learned how to milk your particular system. And those people just see this as another opportunity of milking a system as well. Obviously, if you can make more money on unemployment, that's milking the unemployment system, isn't it?
Right.
So that's what some people do, and those problems are never going to go away. They'll always be there. So if the guy wants more hours and you can't give him, you just don't have the hours. If he wants to quit, that's his decision. Let him go.
Or I can fire him. So thank you.
I think one of the caveats I'd add to this after being in management for a few years is documentation. Make sure, yes. On any of these, I would say we just need to make sure that you're documenting everything well.
Yeah, and also communication and talking to your employees for smaller people. We're not talking communication like documents. I mean, just one-on-one conversations. Hey, you know, this is what we're doing, and we're doing this, and we're cleaning this, and we're whatever you're doing. Just a good explanation. With a small team, well, with a small team, you also have the problem of I have not seen a separate conference room in the chamber offices. So if you have meetings, and if we're supposed to follow, you know, the 6-foot guidelines, most conference rooms are not made for people sitting 6 feet apart in a meeting. So therefore, you have meetings with Zoom for a while longer. Right. That's a practical way of doing what you couldn't do before. We already know this works. So again, it's just continuing to do the things that have proven to be good, which still, you're still being patient. You're still waiting for it isn't over. It's on the way out. I believe that, but you know, it could change tomorrow. Tomorrow they could say, hey, we're going to shut down for another 2 months. I don't particularly believe that, but that could happen, you know?
Yes, very true. So do we have any other questions for Simon? You are awesome. We are so honored to have you as a member of the NEJC Chamber. Thank you for your expertise. I know that you are going to be there for our members if they need to reach out to somebody. So we appreciate that.
I love you guys. I love the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Take care of yourself.
You too.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.